In the customer improvement request site for SAP Enable Now, someone asked if SAP could develop a simple card flipper control for book pages. So you've got an image, you click on it, it flips over to show something else. Now that would be a nice control to have, but I can't see SAP developing that anytime soon. So I thought I'd develop my own one. And it's fairly easy to do, so that's what I'm going to show you in this video. I'm going to start by doing literally a card flipper. I'm going to have a playing card, you see the back of it, you click on the back and it displays the front. And then I'll show you a variation on that using a text box because there's a couple of things to be aware of with that. So let's see how we can do that. I'm going to start by inserting a couple of images into my page. I've already loaded these as assets to the page, so I just need to insert them onto my book page here. So I'm going to start with the front of my playing card, which looks like this, and then I'm going to position that where I want it to be. I'm going to call this front 1. And then I'm going to insert the other image, which is the back of the playing card. And I'm going to call this back 1. And I'm going to put that there. I want to make sure that both of these are exactly the same size so that the effect works. And another important thing to do here is I need to set the aspect ratio off here. If keep aspect ratio is selected, when I change the size of this, it's going to scale it in proportion. And I don't want it to do that because I'm going to cheat and I'm going to actually reduce the width but not the height. And that's what's going to give us our flip effect. So that's all set up with those now. I've got my two images in there. I've got one called front and I have one called back. Now I'm going to use animation controls to change the size of these. And like I said, I'm not really going to flip the card. I'm just going to reduce its width from whatever it is at the moment down to 0. It's basically going to collapse in or around its center axis. And that's going to look like it's being flipped. So I'm going to create an animation control that I want to be exactly the same size as these. And I also want that to be left aligned and top aligned with those, so it's in exactly the same position. Now this, I'm going to have one that reduces the width to 0 and then one that expands it again to full size. So I'm going to have two animation controls for the front, two animation controls for the back. The first one here, this is a full width one. So this is where I've expanded the image up to full size again. So I will call this one expand back 1. Okay, and the object that this is going to apply to is going to be my back 1. Now I'm going to duplicate that, and here I'm going to have collapse back 1. Now this control here, this is the one that I want to basically be 0, as close as I can get to 0. Okay, it's got a width of 0 here, and I'm going to position that right in the center of my other objects here. So it's going to collapse the playing card down to this. And then I basically need to do the same thing for the front. So I'll select my expand and collapse. I'm going to duplicate those two objects, put them on the top as well, get everything aligned on there. And this expand back 2 is actually expand front 1. And that is going to apply to my front. And then collapse back 2, which is a duplicated copy, is going to really be front 1. And again, it's going to apply to that front. Okay, I'll put the cards on the front of that just so we can see them and see what we're doing. So now I've got an expand and a collapse. Now what I need to do is basically trigger all of those. So what I'm going to do is on my back, when the back is displayed, what I want to do on my on click is I want to basically collapse the back. So I'm going to collapse the back here. Okay. And then on the front, what I'm going to do there on click is I'm going to collapse the front. Okay, nice and easy. Now, the problem is when I collapse the back, I then want to expand the front. So what I do there is where I've got collapse back, I go to actions on finish. When I've finished collapsing the back, I am going to expand the front. Okay, I'll start that. Now, although we've set the width to 0, it doesn't really manage to do it to 0 because there's something in there. So it usually ends up being 1 pixel wide and it'll still display. And I don't want that to happen. So what I'm going to do is once I've collapsed back, I want to hide it. Okay, so in here, I'm going to add in here, when it's finished collapsing back, I want to hide it. And I'm going to do the same for the front, which means that the front's going to be hidden initially. And then I'm going to want to show it. So front 1, I'm going to want to show. That's on the collapse of the back. On the collapse of the front, I'm basically doing the opposite. So when I finish collapsing the front, I want to expand the back. And I also want to hide the front. And I want to make sure that the back is visible. So I'll show that. So that should take care of all of that. Now, last thing I need to worry about is that the front is initially hidden, but I want this to be 0 pixels. So it's got to have a width of 0 pixels, otherwise it's going to show as full size already. So I'm going to collapse this down to having a width of 0 in here and make sure that it's positioned in the center. So this front 1 here, I need to make sure that that moves to the center. And just to make sure I can grab that okay, I'm going to move it off here a bit so I can see it. And then I'm going to drop that right in the middle with my other stuff. So my front is now going to be initially collapsed. And this is it. This is all I need to have in here. I've got the front image, I've got the back image, and then I've got collapse for the front, expand for the front, collapse for the back, and expand for the back. And I've got one triggering the other. So let's play this and see how it looks. So I'll go into preview mode. Here's my back. Click on it. And it flips and shows the front. Click on the front. Flips and shows the back. It's not really flipping, but it looks like it's flipping. If it's moving a little too slow for you, you can come back into here and all of these animation objects, they default to a 1 second duration. I can set that to 0.5. And now when I preview it, it's much faster and it flips quite nicely. Okay, so that's done. That's a basic flipper. If you've got 2 images that are exactly the same size, this works very well. Nice and easy to do. Now I'm going to replace the front with a text box. And that's the only change I'm going to make here. So I deliberately numbered all of these things, the front 1, back 1, etc., all the way down here. Because I can take all of these and I could group them if I really wanted to keep everything together. But I'm just going to duplicate that whole thing. Duplicate that entire set, move that over to here. And you can see that it's given me front 2, back 2, collapse and front, whatever. So it does all of that for me, renumbers them, which is nice. On these, for the collapse front and expand front, it is referring to the front 2 image, which is good. It will do that. If you duplicate all of the objects at the same time, it kind of manages to keep the relationship between them. And the same with the collapse one here. It knows it's referring to back 2, which is the duplicated object in here. So this is a copy of what we just did, and I can prove that it works exactly the same way. So I know I've copied everything and everything's working okay. But now I need to create my text box. So I will create a text box here. Again, I want that to be the same size as all of this stuff. So I'll go into same size and I'll move it in a minute because I want to leave it here so we can see the text in it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to drop some default text into it. Here's my text. I've got scroll bars. I don't care about scroll bars at the moment. I've got my text in there. It's the same size. Now this is going to be the front of the card. So to make sure we can see what we're looking at, I'm just going to give that a border width of 1 and I'm going to give it a background color of something light just so that we can see that there's something there. Now notice that this has got a padding of 4 in it. That's by default. This means that I'm not going to be able to reduce this down to 0. Remember that the slide front we squished all the way down so that it was hidden. It's not really going to be able to do that. It kind of says it does, but it can't. But I'm going to drop that right where it was, where the front image was, right in the middle. And now I just need to swap that out wherever the other one's used. So this front 2, this is my old front of the card. I'm just going to delete this because this is going to make it easy to see where it was. So this has a ID of control 4E6 something or other. Remember that. I'm going to delete that. go to my text, which I'm going to hide in here, and I'm going to call this front 2 to make sure I'm in keeping with everything. And now what I need to do is go and look at these controls here. You see this has got a target object that's been crossed out. That's control 4E6 whatever. That's the control that we've since deleted. So I know I need to replace it here. That's going to be on the collapse and the expand. I now need to say this applies to my new text, which is this text box called front 2. So I do that. And then the other thing I need to watch out for is on my completion. Collapse front 2, you can see in here, I've got that same missing control reference. This is where I want to hide my new front 2 text box. So front 2, I want to hide there. And this one's okay. This one here, again, my missing control. That's what I want to change to be front 2. And then this one is okay there. And that should just about do it for us. Looking at this front 2 thing here, you can see it's a little bit wider than 4 pixels, but that's as close as I can get it. Okay, last thing I need to do for my text here is I need to set that on click thing. So when I click on the front of the card, it flips over again. So for my front 2 text box down here, I'm going to go to on click, and on click of this, I want to go to collapse front 2 and start that. And that should be about it. So that should now work. Let's preview it and see. So here's the back of the card. I click on that, flips it over, shows me my text box. Click on my text box, flips that over to show me the card again. And that works. So easy enough to do with that. But the problem that I want to point out here is that an image, it will effectively scale for you. But the text, it will do its best to fit the text in whatever space is available. So watch as I click over here, it's actually reflowing all of that text to fit within the text box. And when I collapse it again, it does the same thing. Now I've got this set to ½ a second, so it's a bit difficult to see. But if I change that for all of these ones here, I'll up this to 3 seconds, and then it'll be easy to see what's happening. And I'll preview that again. Click on the back of the card. It does this nice and slowly, but this is the bit that you want to see. You can see that it's basically filling that text up and it's flowing it. The text size itself stays exactly the same. It's not reducing the font size and then expanding it up. So it does look a little bit odd at times. And you might find that that's not really what you want to do because it looks weird. But it works. And if you've got all of those things set to ½ a second, you don't really notice it. You probably didn't even notice until I pointed it out. If it's fast, you don't really notice. If you're paying attention, you can see it, but it's good enough. Fit for government. So that's that. That's how to create a nice simple page flipper, whether you're doing it for just an image or you want to have a text box on there as well. Okay, hope you found that useful. If you did, please subscribe. Thanks.